address my first question to Mr. Holliman. 2 years ago, your association released a study on the impact of piracy. Can you tell the committee, since that study was released, how effective your industry has been in addressing the problem of piracy in software industry? And how does this issue pose obstacle for small firms?
Thank you for that question. Each year we work with IDC, which is one of the leading technology research firms, to try to quantify the impact of piracy, not just on U.S. companies or not just on our members, but globally. Over the past 2 years, we've seen two trends happen. One is that the overall global rates as a percentage of piracy are going up. And that is because large markets like China, Brazil, Russia, the BRIC markets, who have higher rates of piracy on average than the global average, they're becoming so important in terms of sales of PCs, but the sales of legal software are lagging behind, that they're driving overall global rates up. At the same time, because of the progress in many countries and also, candidly, because of the economic environment last year, the dollar loss due to piracy has stayed sort of roughly the same over the last couple of years. But it's about $51 billion a year lost due to piracy. And when I'm sometimes challenged, how could that possibly be the case? Well, that's the commercial value of pirated software estimated to have been put into use. And if you look at the fact that the packaged software industry is a $300 billion a year industry, it's not a surprise to see that there could be as much as $51 billion in pirated value put in the marketplace.
Thank you. And Mr. Friedman, I recognize that litigation can have a crippling effect on small businesses. It also creates the prospect of unknown costs. How are your business decisions, including those on R&D, spending and hiring, impacted by this uncertainty?
Certainly what's happened to us in the last few years has put us on guard to be a little more wary than we might ordinarily have been in terms of our hiring and our R&D. We are also, however, extremely aware and cognizant of the importance of IP, especially in the technology field. And for a small company, as others here today have testified, it's a critical path to success to gain that intellectual property. Our issue with it really is only how larger companies utilize IP to the detriment of smaller companies. But for ourselves, we feel it's a critical component to future success for small companies.
Thank you. Mr. Carnes, the music industry supports thousands of small businesses from production-related activities. These include firms ranging from marketing to video production to small recording studios. Can you discuss the direct and indirect effects of piracy on the industries that you deal with?
Well, as a songwriter, you know, in my testimony I said all I produce is copyright. You know, that's the only thing that I get paid on. But that copyright, like that hit song, is the thing that drives the entire business. I mean, if you get a hit song, you run into the studio and you demo it, well, you immediately give jobs to studio musicians, to recording engineers, to the studio owners who are small business people. And then it goes to the record label. If they decide to record it, then they re-record it. They make a master recording. So now you have more studio musicians, you have more, you know, bigger recording studios. The budgets continue to increase. And then once it gets to radio, then you have all the marketing people that go out and market the record. And then, of course, you have all the retail people that sell the record. And it continues up the chain. Then you have the advertising people that use the song for the purpose of selling other goods. And every one of these things adds, the value is all added on top of one copyright. Absent that hit song, that whole process, it all starts with the song. Absent the song, it stops right there. If you don't have a hit song, that's it.
Thanks. Mr. Peter Carnes, the process of managing and protecting one's trademarks, patent rights, or copyrights can be very complex. And in many cases, small firms do not know where to start and maybe end up taking no action. So can you talk to us about what proactive measures should a small business take to manage their intellectual property rights?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. First of all, I would like to say that the USPTO actually does a very good job with regard to outreach and trying to explain their process. It's not their job to tell you about the importance of IP, right? But it is their job to explain to you how their process works, and I do think that they generally do a good job trying to do that. I think that if you're in a technology business, you have some sense of make it once and sell it many times. And once you overcome that original hurdle of an idea, then typically what happens is that you set aside some of your funding to engage with an attorney that's practice intellectual property law. And often your investors will require you to do that. So I think that that system is actually pretty well, it works pretty well as far as information goes. I think the problems with IP are not the information about how that it works, but the understanding of the timeliness and the effort that it will take. One area that is a big issue, though, is your patent. If you are issued a patent in the U.S., it protects you in the U.S., and so you must go out and seek protection in every market that you think is relevant to your technology. And so anything that could happen to help with harmonization would help you, especially as a small business, to only have to learn kind of the rules, the general rules, instead of learning the specific rules for each place.
Yeah. Thank you. And Mr. Mansfield, you mentioned in your testimony that Abro, the most American haven't heard about Abro because you don't sell any of the items here. Why is that?
Well, first, Madam Chairwoman, I'd like to echo Mr. Carnes' comment. I think the USPTO does an amazing job in outreach.
That's good
and they're often not recognized for that, but they do very good work there. Abro's history has been about selling where Made in America has a strong competitive advantage. And in developing nations around the world, Made in America really means something. No matter if they're angry at us, if they're mad at us, our political structure, anything, they trust our products, especially non-electronic consumer goods. So we have just built up in a small niche where Made in America can really have an impact, especially after 30 years of consistently providing American level quality non-electronic consumer goods.
Okay. And just since you sell your products overseas, can you tell us what obstacles do you face when you do business in countries with limited protections of IP?
It certainly is true that the counterfeiters target countries where the protections are hard to get or hard to enforce. They're pretty much any country now, especially with the Madrid Protocol, you can get trademarks, you can get the registration. But that is not the end of the fight, that's just the beginning. In most countries, especially developing countries, you have to invest significantly and work to make sure your brand is protected there. In my work, I spend about 100 days a year on the road internationally, physically going to the countries, meeting the key people, and learning what works there. And too often, Western brand owners assume that what works here will work everywhere. There's always a way to protect intellectual property in every country. It's just not always our way. And you have to spend the time to learn the local way.
Thank you. Mr. Graves.